I'm here with Mike Edmunds from S&C Electric Company, who's a leading switch, volt-var optimization, and a renewables management company. Now, Mike, I know you guys are doing a lot of work with Electric Power Board in Chattanooga. We recently named our top distribution automation project in North America. Can you give us a little update on that and go into kind of S&C's actual involvement within the deployment?
Sure, yeah, that was a good award. Well, very interesting with EPB is they actually looked at the cost of reliability, and that was part of the justification for putting more distribution automation in the grid. And we're seeing the largest deployment of the interrupter pulse closer with that technology around DA. So for us, we've been monitoring it actually since April of last year, because we're learning the amount of density of implementation and how that improves reliability as our EPB. So we've actually got some great data around the amount of customer minutes saved. As storms have gone through, there was a Labor Day storm, they actually saw some massive improvements in keeping the power on, with only sort of 2/3 of the deployment actually working. So they're really, for us, we're learning, they're learning, but it's really quite an impressive installation EPB have done.
And I hear the next step in that, within the next, I think, couple quarters, there's actually integration with the DMS with a DMS they're putting in from, I believe, OSI?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of how is that working within the distributed intelligence switch you guys obviously have a very high ability and a lot of experience with? How is it functioning so quickly?
That's a very good question. It's a classic case of distributed intelligence and centralized intelligence. So the DA part was installed first, so that went into the grid first, while EPB was looking for their chosen DMS provider, which indeed was OSI, who won that. So we're working with OSI to connect the distributed intelligence part, the DA part, and that two voltage levels with their DMS system. So we've been working with them now for 6 months, and as we start to integrate the two systems together. And the idea of that is that you can get very fast action within the grid for automation and response, so you don't have to check with Homebase before you make a decision. So they talk to each other in the grid, make decisions extremely quickly, and then all the time report back to the DMS to check from a policy level and from a deployment level whether that's what from a systems standpoint should actually happen. So you get the best of both worlds, a very fast reaction and then the overall coordination in the grid. So that's going to be a great example of layered intelligence.
I know community energy storage is something you guys have moved into with an R grant that you're working with a couple other vendors with, and I believe, I think it's Duke, is that right?
Actually AEP and Duke. AEP has been the big one around that. So yeah, that's I would call bleeding edge. The cost of storage, it really needs to come down to make this a huge deployment. But there is actually applications, we're talking in places of Brazil, Australia, where you have feeders that can be 400, 500, 600 miles long. And in those particular cases, it actually does make sense to put storage at the edge of the grid rather than reconduct through a whole long feeder. So if you manage it in your head, there's a certain sort of mileage down a feeder where it makes sense today. But as the cost of storage actually goes down, which I think is going to be about 2 to 5 years, that kind of a time frame, you'll see more and more cost-effective distributed storage solutions. But really how that works is something we're still discovering ourselves. So let's take photovoltaics. You get too many of them in the grid, you'd start to get some voltage spikes as cloud cover goes over. Actually distributed storage can actually damp that out and control that. And there's algorithms around the power electronics to actually allow more photovoltaics into the grid. So it's actually an enabler for more renewables, at the same time having all the benefits of providing reliability, doing voltage support and other areas. So we're still discovering how that actually affects the grid, but it's making it very much more dynamic. We are having discussions with some utilities of thousands of deployments of energy storage at the edge of the grid, as opposed to building additional power plants. So those discussions are going on now. I think 2 to 3 years' time we'll start to see greater deployments, depending on the cost of storage, of course.
I want to thank Mike for joining us today. Very interesting to get S&C's perspective always, and very nice to see the extent of products that they're bringing to the market these days.
Great, thanks very much for your time, appreciate it.